history, the recorder of the world. In other words, everything. It defines us as a planet, as a race, and is even woven into the very fabric of who we are individually. It captures everything. Nothing escapes it, not even time. One of the benefits from history is change. Sometimes change is not good or wanted, but it also can be a great thing. Change comes from want, but mostly is derived from events and circumstance. Today, we cover one such thing. It came about from necessity. By now, you are wondering what that is. So let's start with a little history that brought about change. In 1965, you had Chevy trying to overtake Ford in all three car categories, the small, the mid, and the full size. So you already had the Nova, which was very nimble and everything, very small car, really, really great car that everybody loved, and power to weight, it was just a wonderful little car to drive. Then Chevy brought on the Chevelle to take on the Falcon for the mid-size. Who doesn't like a Chevelle? Beautiful, beautiful car and concept at the time. Then they completely redid the Impala. The Impala, once it was redone and put on the market, sold over 1 million units. 1 million units.
000,000.
So they had all the bases covered. They even took all three cars and gave it the SS option package. In other words, it gave it better suspension, larger displacement engines, more horsepower for the guys that wanted to pay the extra dollars to get it. So yes, we have finally beat Ford in all three categories. Yes.
They have the Mustang.
What?
But they have the Mustang, sir.
Whoa, I think I just figured something out.
What?
This sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks.
Mustang? That's a horse that runs out in the field somewhere. What are you talking about?
Mustang.
In 1964 and a half to be exact, Ford unveils the Ford Mustang. And with this long front end and short rear end, it started the pony car war. And Chevy, like every other car manufacturer at the time, was caught off guard and were caught thinking about what can we do to take on this Mustang. Now the Mustang was originally made and designed for the everyday woman in mind. That's why it came out with the inline 6-cylinder when it came out. So
should a single girl buy a Mustang, a 66 Mustang? Oh, well.
It was basically designed for the average woman, the household woman who's starting to go out into the work field and everything. But as the car became more and more popular, and I mean it was almost an overnight success. I mean it just took off. They started putting larger engines in them, V8s and stuff like that, and then the power to weight ratio, guys just started. It was such a great platform that the power to weight ratio was tremendous. The handling capabilities of the car was just ahead of its time, and then the look category, it was just a beautifully designed car. And Chevy was just left. They put all this time and money and research into doing the other three cars. They never saw the Mustang coming. If they had wind of it, then they never let on, because they sure had nothing at the time to compete with it. Out of necessity, out of change, the Camaro was born.
Volcano. Alive. Camaro, fiery new creation from Chevrolet. Camaro, the new car that's something else. Something you've never seen before in a driving machine. This is the SS350 with rally sport equipment, wicked black grille, and a fuselage that bulges around a 350 cubic inch V8 engine. Shaped for action, all the way back to its sporty rear deck. Taut springs and shock. Wide big car stands for road-hugging stability. Camaro SS 350, broad rally stripes circling the front. New safety features are standard equipment. Among them, the new GM-developed energy-absorbing steering column. Backseat up, backseat down. You can order yours with special instrumentation, too. Camaro in coupe or convertible, add whatever you can handle. Like hideaway headlights, big car engine. Camaro, lean and molten. Camaro, at your Chevrolet dealers now.
Without history, there is no change. And Chevy's goal was to build the Camaro for one goal and one goal only, to take on the Mustang. So let's get to number one, the very first. N100001, the very first Camaro. Built in secret by Fisher, work began on the very first Camaro May 17th, 1966. And it was delivered May 21st to Chevrolet for final assembly at their Norwood plant for what would be known as the pilot car program. The very first Camaro, VIN number N100001 of the pilot car program, was to be number one of 49 of the pilot car program cars to be built. Now, what is a pilot car program? Back in 64, 65, those days, you had no Twitter, you had no Facebook, you had no Instagram, you had no internet. So how does people learn about these cars? Anybody that has grown up anytime from 70 to 80 knows billboards, they know magazines, they know word of mouth, they know conventions, and they know world fairs, stuff like that. So that is how these cars were actually advertised to the general public for so long, before the internet even came along. The very first Camaro was built with a 230 cubic inch inline 6-cylinder, had a 3-speed transmission, white wall tires with the high fidelity push button radio, and it also came with a 110 volt static lighting system installed inside these cars. In other words, whenever you go to some of the convention centers and everything, they would have lighting on the inside of the cars, so that from afar or even up close, you could see the great details and time and design that went into these cars. Hidden in storage until the conventions would start, Pete Estes, one of the big wigs over at Chevy, held a 10 a.m. 14 city call. Did what would be the equivalent to a news conference today. He held a 14 city news conference phone call, in which he revealed the name of the car. Now, up until then, there was still a lot of names floating around. One of them even being the Panther, and that's what the code name of this project was, Panther. The Panther? I just don't think that would fly. But in that news conference, he revealed the true name of the car and of the project, which was Camaro. Now, the name Camaro really means nothing. Back in the day, it was said to be a name that would bring the combination of machinery and humans together with friendship, or something like that along the lines. No, that ain't what it meant. So when he was pushed further and harder, finally he relented and said, Camaro is a small, ferocious animal that eats Mustangs. There's sticking a knife in it. Yes, sir, let's call that one done. Full production actually began on the Camaro at the Norwood plant, August 7th, 1966. Now here's something that a lot of people really don't know. The very first Camaro, if you go back and look at photos of the first Camaro, or you go back and look at advertisements of the first Camaro, magazine ads of the first Camaros, you would see some of them would have badges, some of them wouldn't have badges. In other words, on the side of the fenders, it would say Camaro, it would have the grill emblem in it, and then on the front fascia right at the right front corner of the hood, it would also say Camaro. Sometimes it wouldn't, sometimes it would. And if you look at those photos, there were no holes drilled in those places. And if you've ever taken a badge off an old car, you know there's two tips that stick out of the back of most badges, or emblems if you will, and you have to have holes that go through, and there's a nut that's run in on the back side, and that's what holds it in place. Well, for it to work for the photo shoots and everything, it is guessed that they used double-sided tape to attach those badges and emblems. Now, after the conventions were over and all the publicity was done and everything, it was shipped to a Chevy dealer that had ties with some of the higher ups in the organization. RTR's Chevrolet. It was shipped to him, where he kept it on display as a sales and promotional item. You know, here it is in all of its grandeur, the brand new Camaro. So you want one? I've got one right here. Let's get you one ordered. And RTR's kept that car there for 2 years and 5 months, which now makes this 1967 car, which was actually made in 1966. You know, it's getting up there in age, but it's still brand new. The design is still fresh with all of its angles and modular design and everything. It was just a super ahead of its time car, equivalent to the Mustang. Now, the Mustang still led in sales the first couple years. Matter of fact, I think that, if I'm not mistaken, it stayed in the lead in sales until the second generation came along in 1970. But that's a whole different topic, a whole different video. That's not what this is about. This is about the very first Camaro. Again, N100001. And why is this car so important? I'm glad you asked. Because after the 2 years and 5 months at RTR's, the history actually begins to unfold and take shape. So let's get into that. The car was eventually sold to Linda Johnson for the grand total full sticker price of $2,500. Now, I'll insert the equivalent of what that would be today so that you'll know, for inflation and all that good stuff. But $2,500, and there was no lien on the car, so she knew the significance of this being the very first car. She kept the car until 1975, when it was sold to the second purchaser. Again, to a dealer in Oklahoma. The car basically stayed in Oklahoma, but it was sold to another car dealer who also knew the importance of it being the very first one, and again paid full sticker for it, $2,500. JS Auto Parts took only 3 months to sell the car again, for again full sticker prices. See how this is going? To Alvis Harper. Now, Alvis Harper bought this car so that him and his son could enjoy it together. But tragically, Alvis lost his son at a very early age. And so distraught with his car sitting there, representing what he and his son had done together, you know, the memories they had in the car and everything, he had to get rid of it. He wanted that car gone ASAP. So in 1982, Al Tipke bought the car from Alvis. You know, it's a sad thing. The guy just lost his son and everything, but he didn't want to take advantage of him. So again, he paid full sticker price for it. But he did something different than everybody else did. Although it was a very important and significant car, what he did with it was he took it and made a full-fledged drag car out of it. Yep, turned number one Camaro into a full-fledged drag car. And we'll get back to that in just a minute, because there's going to be some significance with this. The car was seen at many racetracks. I mean, it's been all over the place, especially around Oklahoma. It was a very competitive car. He did a lot of great things with it. And then in 2009, it was sold yet once again. It was sold to Jovan Sims in 2009. It had actually been in storage since the 80s. So, you know, it's just sitting here and all this stuff, collecting dust. Nobody knew what happened to it. Nobody knew where it was at after that. And it was just basically lost. Jovan was looking for something to build into a race car with his son and everything. So he wanted to buy a project car and actually race it with his family. But Jovan didn't know the significance of the car. He just found a race car for sale that was in storage. Again, he paid roughly $2,500 for it. But when he went to register it with his insurance company, you know, that way it could be covered in case of accident or theft, is when the story really started to unfold as far as this car. once he found out what the car really was, well, he decided it was time to move on to something else, you know, different job, different area. So he decided to sell the car. There was a young fellow named Logan Lawson. He was sitting around one day looking on all the forums and everything, you know, looking for a car, just generally sitting there looking around. If I'm not mistaken, the story was he was actually in school and was looking on the forums. But either or, he was on the forum boards and everything, just looking around, and all of a sudden he's seen a Camaro for sale. And it said, you know, #1, the very first. So curious, he calls up his dad. They talk about it for a second, and they dropped everything. They dropped everything they were doing and kicked it to go look at this car. They wanted to be the first one to get there, because as you can imagine, if it was really the first one, the significance this could have. So they went and looked at the car. They looked at the VIN number, you know, the door tags and all that stuff, and it definitely said 00001. So, you know, they were excited, but with a little bit of ambition, a little bit of, you know, holding back a little bit of anxiety, if you will, for lack of better terms, because they thought they had #1, but they didn't know for sure. So the investigative story starts. So they reached out to basically anybody that had any know of Chevrolet, of Camaros. They reached out to the Heritage Foundation of Chevrolet, where they try to keep tracks of the VIN numbers and, you know, special cars and everything. And through all of this, they was able to locate all of the previous owners. I think all of them but one was still alive, and they reached out and everything. And it was through this process where they went back to the guy that owned it, that actually drag raced the car. They found him, and through talking to him and everything, they discovered something miraculous. He didn't just change it into a drag car. When he took the car, well, when he bought the car, he realized what the car was, the very first one. So he meticulously took everything out very carefully, put it in boxes, and put it over in the corner for storage. And it was forgotten. So naturally, when the Lawsons got the car, they thought, well, all that stuff's gone. What are we going to do? You know, we're going to have to buy reproduction stuff. Well, when they met up with him and got to talking to him, would you guys, you know, right before they were ready to leave, would you guys be interested in all the parts that took off the car? Can you imagine? I would be like, you want to ask a serious question? So the fun begins then. A total restoration with no expenses spared started on this car. The engine was completely redone, you know, the frame off restoration, the actual marks were put back on, the overspray was done. This car was built back to very factory specific specs, as close as they could get to it. As a matter of fact, I think they used all the original parts except for a few pieces like the carpet, of course. You know, I think most of it, if I remember correctly, everything was original except for like 2 or 3 things. And one of them being, of course, the paint. The other one being the carpet, and I cannot remember what the other one was, I'm sorry. But it's a very interesting story. So here they are, they get this car redone, they get it fully rebuilt. Now what? Well, let's take it on display, let's take it on tour, you know, take it across the nation and share it with everybody. So what they did was they actually tracked down, like I said, as many of the original owners that they could get that was still alive. They found some of the people that originally worked on the car on the assembly lines, or even in management, or like the son of A.T. Ayers, the Chevy guy that got the car to start with to get the ball rolling after the pilot car program. What they did was they got all these people to sign it. I'm sorry, I'm starting to ramble. He got all these people to sign the trunk area. You know, this is how they used to do it back in the day. Anybody that was of importance or felt the need to, they would sign the car somewhere, put their little stamp on it.
For other people.
I'm Logan Lawson.
And I'm Corey Lawson. And this car matters.
And so is the story of the first Camaro. Can you imagine? It starts life as just a simple, humble press car, pilot car program. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, because I really enjoy doing stuff like this. Even though I'm not outside with my cars, I'm enjoying the fact that I own a Camaro, doing these stories, doing the Hot Wheels, whatever. That's the whole point. It's not a car per se. It's the bonding with everything that embraces the car. So you get out there and enjoy yours. Doesn't matter what kind it is. Doesn't matter if it's Camaro, Mustang, Hyundai, Volkswagen, whatever. As long as you enjoy it. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.